There we go. So let's have a look at the meeting features. As I said, we're not going to go through each thing of what meetings does. You know, meeting tools are very similar, except to talk about the tools that you can use with your students and with your colleagues that are maybe different from other things. So I'm using what's called the new meeting experience. It puts the toolbar across the top here. I can help you turn this on at the moment, and maybe this is something that Aggie might be able to take away for me. Seeing as you're here, I'll use you. In QM at the moment, the new meeting experience gets turned off every day and reset. That's the only organization that I work for at the moment that does this. So I wonder if there's a way of not turning that off, or maybe I can email Conrad or have a chat to him. But certainly that seems to be happening at the moment. So
I'll speak to Conrad to the
thanks.
areas opportunity. So what happens is it gets reset for you, or it gets reset for all of us?
For everybody. So a couple of people have said, oh,
Right.
I've turned it on, but it keeps getting turned back to the old meeting experience.
Okay, and how do you turn it on?
It's in settings, and there's a little tick box that says turn on the new meeting experience. All right, so it'd be really good if we could just stop that from happening, because people are going to get the new meeting experience anyway, so we may as well
Yes,
have it allowed all the
that's
time.
definitely not something we
Yeah,
would
it may be
want to
that people don't
configure.
know that it's doing it. It's probably one of those things that Microsoft have set up and no one's understood what it does yet, and they've not turned it off. So yeah, but it'd be nice if it didn't switch back to the old experience every day.
I'll definitely check this out for you.
It's a Conrad question, I think.
Yes.
Brilliant. So the new meeting experience has the same tools. You'll see a lot of the same tools across from here. If you've got the toolbar on the middle, you'll see it looks similar. There are some differences and there are some new features, and there is also a load more stuff that is still being rolled out at the moment. So I don't want to sound like a proper IT person when I say there's loads of stuff coming, but there is loads of stuff coming before October, November time that will make working with students especially even more useful, or even more kind of worthwhile using Teams. All right, so first of all, you'll see there's 4 of us here. If you were on video, I would see your video, and it tiles as many people as it can across the screen. This view is called the gallery view. There are 9 people that you can see in the gallery view, i.e. 3x3 grid. Okay. If I hover over somebody, I can see what they do. I can see that Davor is a senior lecturer in law. I can instant message him privately outside of this call, should I wish. Okay. Now that works in other tools as well, but it's a little bit more hidden in Teams. But I can easily start a call with Davor or start a chat with Davor easily by just pressing that button. So hover over, tap the button, and away we go. All right. That's how private messaging works in Teams. And I can then privately message him and say, what do you think about this? I need to ask a question about these things, rather than do it inside the call. Okay. So that's how that works. The more people I have in my meeting, the more tiles will be shown on the screen, up to 9. After 9, it will tile the people across the bottom with no video on. Okay. However, there is a new view in Teams called Large Gallery View, which allows you to show up to 49 people across your screen. You have to physically turn that on to make it work. All right, because you may have 50 people in a meeting, but you actually only want to focus on 9 or 10, and you don't want them to be tiny. So Teams has to be turned on in Teams, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, but generally it will rotate who's speaking into the top left slot and move people around as they talk. All right, if I hover over Davor here, I've got 3 dots next to his name, and I can pin him. So if he was the person I wanted to focus on for my session, I can pin him and he will be the person who filled my screen, rather than Teams rotating people around. And I can do that with up to 9. Okay. I tend to let Teams just rotate people, but that may be different for you. Okay. So if you're running a live session, the most important thing is going to be your participants window. Okay, this is your kind of control panel, and there's going to be more controls arriving here. We need a little chat about permissions, and we need to understand what you can do with the people in your session. All right, there are 3 levels of permission in Teams: owner, presenter, which we all are at the moment, and attendee, which is your kind of lowest form of life, if you like, in your meeting. If you're an owner, at the moment, to be an owner, you have to be the person who physically sets up that meeting. Okay, you have to set that up yourself. All right. But coming up, maybe, I was setting it up, but actually Aggie was going to be teaching that session. I would be able to make her an owner as well. So it's almost like delegation. All right. So that she gets the owner tools in the meeting. Right. The middle permission level is presenter, and we are all presenters. We all have the option to mute everybody. I could kick Aggie out and she could kick me out, or mute each other, all those things, because we are presenters. We can do the bulk of work in the meeting. Okay. The lowest form of life is an attendee. All right. Now, if I make Aggie an attendee by pressing the three dots and make an attendee, change her permissions, she becomes an attendee in my session. And that means that we then have 5 presenters and 1 attendee. Okay. And if you're an attendee, you can control yourself in the meeting. You cannot affect what anybody else does. And she's just left to go on another call. You can see she's on hold. That's what happens if you leave and go to another call at the same time. It's quite a good demo. If you're an attendee, you can only manage yourself. You can control your video, your sound, put your hand up and use instant messaging, nothing else. Okay, so it's good for students, and we'll talk about them in just a sec. Otherwise, the owner permission has ultimate control over the meeting, and it has a lot of useful tools. So as I said, at the moment, the owner has to be the person who sets the meeting up themselves, but that will change. So if you're going to run live sessions for students, ideally you are the person who sets that up because you get the tools. All right. And those tools are, they'll appear next to the participant's title here, just in this row. Those tools are the ability to download a spreadsheet of who's been at your meeting, for how long, how much they participated, how many times they put their hand up, how long they spoke for, those kinds of things. You get really good data about the meeting. And also the ability to bulk change permissions. All right, so if I wanted to change everyone to be a presenter or everyone to be an attendee, I could do that if I was the owner. Okay, as the owner, I also get an extension to my leave button, which allows me to finish the meeting for everybody. All right, so at the moment, if I left this meeting, you could quite happily carry on without me. Now, I probably don't want that if I'm running a lecture. So what I would do is I would very simply just press the end meeting for everybody button, and the meeting would finish and everybody would get kicked out. Really simple. Okay, so owner has the most permission. Presenter in the middle has most permissions, and they can do most things. Attendee is your student permission. All right, and students will automatically be added to your meeting as attendees. Okay, very simply, they will be attendees in your meeting if they are students. Okay, nice and simple. All right, I hope that makes reasonable sense. There's a few more tools coming to the owner permission. All right, and those tools are going to be the ability to make sure that your students can't talk even if they turn their microphone on. All right, so you'll be able to say, actually, students, when they're in my meeting, even if they turn their microphone on, they can't say anything. The meeting is muted for everybody except for me. So there's a few little tools like that coming. All right. So that's participants. The next one is the conversation. Now, I don't propose to spend lots of time on conversation, except for please use it if you have questions. And you can see the recording has started. The most important thing to talk about here is the way that Teams manages the meeting. All right. Teams doesn't care that we're on video or in a call. What it cares about is where the stuff for this call is going to go and where the invitation lives. Okay, there are 2 ways to have a call in Teams. You can either have a chat-based call like we are at the moment, or a Teams-based, channel-based call like I suggest you have when you work with your students. All right, so a chat-based call is very much for people who are from different departments across the university. So they come from all over the place. We have a chat because that's the container that we share in common. Okay. However, ideally with students, you have them all in a team. They're all there already. So the ideal is that you meet in your channel inside your team, because then all the content, all the resources, all the meeting videos, all the documents, everything else gets saved into that channel in the team, rather than clogging up your chat space on the left-hand side in Teams. All right, so if you can get your students into a team, it'll allow you to share files and documents and chat with them anyway, but it will also allow you to have really good quality meetings where everything is nicely organized, and unlike chat, does not expire. Chat expires after 6 months of inactivity. Teams-based stuff does not. Okay, so that's the most important things to understand about how calls work in Teams. Two types of call, they both look the same, they both have the same features, but one of them lives in a channel in a team and one of them lives in a chat. Neither one is better than the other, but make your choice around using Teams with large groups of people and do it inside a team if you can. All right. Okay. Hands up button obviously is a hands up button, and more actions. So with the more actions button, I'm using the desktop version, and the desktop version has the most functions, obviously. All right. Depending on what other device you join on, you'll have different functions for those devices. So if you join using an Android or iOS device, you'll have some of these options. Android and iOS devices are great for joining meetings, and not so great for editing documents and working on those kind of asynchronous offline things. All right, yes, they can open files, but they can't edit them easily. And if you join on the web, which is the other way of joining a meeting, then you have very few features. You can have 4 people tiled across the screen at any one time, and you have a few of the meeting experience features, but not many. Okay, so your best option, and I would say your recommended option if you're running sessions, is to join using the full Teams experience. All right, so download the app onto your desktop PC, your Mac, or even your Linux box. They all share the same code finally, so that the features will be the same on all of those. All right, as long as you've got a reasonably new device. Okay. So I'm joined on the desktop version, and I have all of these tools. So a few of them are useful, some of them are not. I will skip past the not. So incoming video, turns that off if you've got poor connection. Okay, the next useful one is recording. Now this session is recording, which means that it is recorded to a space in Office 365 called Stream. Okay, and Stream is basically like a kind of private YouTube, but it also has some video editing and audio editing capabilities, as well as live streaming capabilities too. So it's a really powerful platform. Go and have a go if you're interested in those things. It also has a transcription engine. All right, and that technology we'll see 3 times this morning. So once here, the transcription engine automatically transcribes your meeting to text. Okay, so you can then download that or just have it there, search it, and also in the matter of weeks, you will also get attribution, so it will know who said what in your meeting. All right, so that's recording. Okay, recording gets linked to the team, channel, or chat where the meeting is taking place. Okay, so that's recording. Live captions. Again, this is the second time we will see this technology. Live captions takes what you say and turns it into text live on the screen. Okay, and again, in a few weeks' time, this will have attribution. So I'll be able to say, you know, Iftikhar said this and Davor said this and Nick said that, or whatever. That will all be on the screen. Okay, really, really simple. Also, you will be able to use this with up to 30 odd different languages. And again, that's coming. It's been put back a little bit, but it already works in PowerPoint. If you're a PowerPoint user, just turn on subtitles and you can choose from many, many different languages really easily to make that work. Okay, a very, very simple tool, but very powerful. Great accessibility tool, great language tool, you know, to get people into your meeting and understanding what's going on. And this is per person. All right, so you know, one person in the meeting could want it subtitled in German and the other person could want it in Swedish, and that would be fine. All right, huge number of languages supported well. Okay, so that is your live captions. Next one is background effects. Now these are good fun, but they also serve two really important purposes. So you can add your own backgrounds. They could even be GIFs if you want them to move, if you're that way inclined, if you want to really go to town. But there's loads that you can either download or create yourself from photos, those kind of things. The original one developed by Microsoft was Blur. And this was designed for people with autism because they find it really difficult to pick out facial expressions and meaning on a small screen. So Blur is really useful. If you do have students with those needs, then make sure you blur your background or use a white background just so that they can easily pick out your face in a meeting. Okay, it's good practice anyway. The second important reason is if people are working in really difficult spots, difficult spaces, then this is going to provide them with a way of hiding what's in their background. All right, and it gets lots of people who otherwise wouldn't be in a meeting. All right. So that's in background effects, only PC, Mac and Linux at the moment on that version. Okay. Next one is focus. Now, I don't use this particularly, but if Daniel was sharing content with the meeting, I could focus completely on his content by tapping focus, and that removes everybody who's on video and everything else that happens. Now, I personally don't like that because I like to be connected to the meeting as well, but that's up to you. It's there if you want it to be. These three controls here, together mode, large gallery, and gallery, control how you see things on the screen. Now, I can't use large gallery because there aren't enough of us. I can use together mode. So if I use together mode, it puts us in a kind of virtual room, which is rather strange. I'm here on my own at the moment because no one else is on video. But it puts us in a kind of virtual room. At the moment, it's a kind of lecture theatre, but eventually there will be two other views here. You'll to use a coffee shop or a boardroom table. It's quite an interesting feature. Have a go and see what you think of it in another meeting, and it will just zoom out until you can get lots and lots of people in your meeting. All right. I think it's quite an interesting tool. So that's how you would change those views. Last three, meeting details, notes, and device settings, reasonably self-explanatory at the top there. Okay. Outside of that, last couple of tools, camera, microphone, and sharing content. Now, I am sharing some content, so this is the only thing I can't actually demonstrate to you, but there are broadly four ways of sharing content. And on yours, you'll see a little white upward facing arrow. Whether you've got the old version or the new version, it doesn't matter. If you tap on that upward facing arrow, you can do that without ruining my screen share. That's fine. And across the bottom of your screen, you'll see a kind of pop-up box. We call it the sharing tray. And it has broadly four types of sharing built in. All right. That sharing allows you to do four things. Share your whole desktop. All right. So you can share your whole screen, or if you've got more than one monitor, you can share more than one screen, or you can choose which screen you share. Easiest thing to do, but also the most the least secure, I suppose, because people see everything that's on your computer. All right. If you don't want to share everything that's on your computer, the next one along is to share a window. Now you can present content through a window, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. You can't see that I've got Audible and Chrome open at the bottom of my screen here. You can only see my Teams window. Okay, and that's a nice way of doing it. No matter what I go off and do, you'll still only see my Teams window. Okay, so really, powerful tool, really. You can present a PowerPoint through here with slide notes, transitions, and inking if you use those things. However, the downside to presenting a PowerPoint through windowed mode, unless you've got more than one screen, is that you often feel a little bit disconnected from that meeting. All right, so you end up feeling that you can't actually see the participants and you can't be a part of the instant messaging. So therefore, it's often better to do the third thing, which is to present a PowerPoint through Teams into that meeting. Okay, and what Teams does is uploads that PowerPoint into your OneDrive and presents it through Teams so that you can still see who's on video and what's happening in the instant message chat, who's got their hand up. And I prefer that. It's really designed for people with one screen. All right, to make sure that you get the best from your meeting. So what I would suggest is find someone friendly, put a 10-minute Teams meeting in your diary, and present some content, to kind of test out, because you might have a Mac or a Linux PC, or you might have, 3 monitors, or just 2 monitors, or just one like I use, and your experience will be different depending on what you, how you want to present that content. All right. So if you've got one screen, ideally use that PowerPoint presentation tool that's built into Teams, okay, because that makes it work well. If you've got 2 screens and you want to use the kind of more advanced features of PowerPoint, then use the windowed mode to share your PowerPoint. All right, and you can do that with only one screen, but you end up a bit disconnected from the meeting. All right, the 4th tool is the whiteboard tool. All right, really self-explanatory. It's a normal whiteboard, but it's quite good. It's got sticky notes and text and all kinds of stuff you can put on there. So it's a great way of sharing sort of, drawn content into your meeting, or text-based that you're going to write. Okay, so that in a nutshell is the meeting experience. All right. Are there any questions about the meeting experience or anything else? And Davor, you got your hand up. Thank you very much.
Hi. Yes. How do we use the whiteboard? Where is it?
Sure. Let me start one. So if I just stop sharing my screen, and I will just, it's on the very far right hand side when you open the sharing tray. And if I start the whiteboard, we should all be able to draw on this. It often goes black for 5 seconds or so, and then you will see that you get this white canvas. Can you see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. So then you're welcome to, have a go. So we can, if you've got a stylus, if you've got a machine with a stylus, or one of these sort of Wacom Bamboo type tablets, you can write on the screen.
Okay, so we need extra equipment in order to be able to kind of imitate the.
Yeah, if you want to draw on the screen, then you ideally, the easiest thing is either use your iPad with your finger, or have a machine with a stylus, or buy a cheap bamboo tablet. And I know Queen Mary have invested in loads of these, so you might find that there's some Sentry that you can have.
Bamboo tablet. Okay.
Yeah, it's made by a company called Wacom, who do the interactivity for most machines with these styluses. And it's just a USB thing. You just put it in front of your machine. You can then draw quite happily. So it's a really nice tool to have, especially if you're teaching a lot from remote locations. But we can do sticky notes, things like that. That all works nicely. All right. So it's quite a nice tool for sharing ideas like that, and we can all share it together. It gets kept as part of the call afterwards. We can export it as a graphic if we want to, and put it into OneNote, or share it with our students, or whatever, and that works really nicely.
Yeah, I asked because in law, at least in my tutorials, we write a lot on the whiteboard, and if we can't do that, then students lose a lot of the experience. So that's why I asked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, if I were you, if you don't have one already, get a Wacom tablet, or the cheapest one is called Wacom Bamboo. It's perfectly good. They're about £30, and that plugs into your computer. However, I spoke to Rachel Bentz, your CIO, and she has bought a load of these. So there may be some Sentry that you could have. Yeah, it's quite a good tool. If you want more functionality than this, if whiteboarding is really important to you, and you have a Windows PC, there is a brilliant Windows app which just gives you a huge amount more functionality that you can still share with your meeting. So there's this, for me, I have a button that says open in the app.
Okay, I have a MacBook, but anyway.
I'm sorry.
Never mind.
Most of the features there, but yes, okay. Fine. Brilliant. So let me stop presenting. So any other questions about the kind of meeting experience in Teams before we have a look at the more asynchronous working together bit of Teams? You don't have to speak now or forever hold your peace. You're very welcome to ask.
If I may, I'd put another question.
Yeah, of course.
Which is, how do we create teams and channels, and who adds students to the teams? Is it done centrally, or we have to do it for every tutorial we give, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So creating teams is very easy. I'll show you in here now. Normally we do this. Well, if you come to the other sessions, we'll do this and we'll play with this, and you will actually be my student in my team, because you'll probably never get that experience again.
Perfect. But yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah. So these are my teams. These are the teams that I'm in, and I've just clicked on Teams on the left-hand side here. To create a team, you go to Join or Create a Team. Normally it's in the top right, depending on your view, and you have this button to create a team. And if it's for students, create a class team. Please don't let the primary school backpack fool you. It is what you need to use. So create a class team. Okay, that will then ask you what you want to call it and who do you want to put in that team. And I've got a demo one for today that I've populated and used loads, so it looks like it's been used. This is my astrophysics semester 1. And your other question is really important around who puts students into your team and how does that work? Now, there are 3 ways to get students into a team. The one that's the easiest is for QM to do that automatically from your student database, basically. They are working on that now. There are various products, various tools that can do that. It is quite an easy thing to do. Microsoft make their own, which is free. And there's various others by other companies that will take data from your student database and put those into teams. However, the university's kind of exploration into teams of students, like most, is quite early days, so that is not ready yet. They are experimenting with it and it will probably work, but it is not ready yet. So which leaves you with 2, and neither one is perfect. Eventually you will have teams created for you, but that is not happening right now. So there are 2 ways. The first way is to add students manually. Now that's going to be your least popular way of doing that. You can copy and paste names and it should go match them up depending on how busy it is. But you obviously don't want to be sat there typing in 100+ names because that is not a great use of time. The other way to do it is very easy way of getting large numbers of students into your team at once. I'll just show you. We'll do all of this next time. I'm not going to go through settings today. We can generate a team code. Okay, so if you wanted to join my team, I could send you this code. I could copy it, put it in an email, or if I was in my lecture theatre or classroom, I could even put that on the big screen quite happily. That 7-digit code will allow you to join my team. All right, and that is the best way of getting large numbers of students into your team. Now, of course, students would actually have to do something with that code, whereas the other way, the better way, is to have it made for them and they are joined to your team already. However, with that option not on the table at the moment, your best bet is to give your students your code and say, I expect you to use this code to go to Teams, join or create a team, and enter that code in there. Then they will join your team. All right, so that's a good way of getting large numbers of students into your team. It is not perfect because it relies on students doing something with that code, but I guess if they don't use it, they're going to miss out. Ideally, yeah, sure.
Do we have to create a code for every tutorial, every week a new code, or we create one code and it's worth for the whole term?
Yeah, so this depends on how you set your teams up, which is probably the most important decision that you'll make. So how does it work for you? What do you teach, and how often do you do live sessions or all those kinds of things?
Once a week.
Once a week.
So let's say we have 4 groups, and we have one hour session each week.
Okay, so if I were you, I would probably create 1 team per semester or something like that, like I've done with my astrophysics one here. And then inside there, I would probably create channels for our tutorials, because then you don't have to recreate that. You get your student into the team and then they can automatically join your tutorials.
Okay.
I would say that's probably the best thing to do. And maybe you could use 1 channel. If you have four tutorials a week, maybe you have, you know, a channel for either 1 week. So you could have a channel called week 1, or you could have a channel that represented a body of work, a module of work or something like that, where you said, okay, this channel is for module 1, and it's going to contain all the tutorials for the first 6 weeks or something like that. That's absolutely fine. And probably what I spend a lot of my consultancy time doing is helping universities literally build these structures, because often the teams are going to be around for a long time. And thinking about how this works is one of the most important things. And it's also quite bespoke because different subjects have different ways of teaching and getting content to students. But yeah, if it was me off the top of my head, that's what I would do. I wouldn't necessarily create a channel for each tutorial, because you could end up with a lot of channels down here that you end up having to then manage, but maybe a channel per module, per week, per fortnight, per month, or whatever.
Per tutorial group, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Per tutorial group would also work really, really well. You can then also create custom tags and ways of referring to those tutorial groups so that you get the right information to them. And I'll show you that in just a sec.
Okay.
But yeah, that works really, really well. Okay. So just to rewind very slightly, our team, Astrophysics Semester 1. And again, just to recap that, you know, various people do different things with teams. Especially at university level, the way that you teach is very different. You know, I'm adopting the way that I've worked with Manchester here University. They are going for teams in a reasonably big way, and they are then thinking, well, okay, how do we organize our teams? Do we want a team for the whole year, or is that going to end up too cluttered? So what they've opted for is a team, especially in some of their subjects, for each semester. So each semester has its own team, and inside that team, your students live, and inside there are your channels, and then they can build up their content inside there. Some courses have said, well, actually, we just want a team for the whole of the course, and that team might last 4 years or 3 years. Or some people have said, well, actually, we want a team per year of the course, and at each beginning of each year, we're going to get our students to join a new team. All right. The less teams that your students join, the better, because of that's less work for you getting them in. Once they're in, you can then create channels and move content around to get them into the right place. Okay. But that's the most important bit of decision making that you need to do. Your team meetings should happen in a channel. Okay. So if we go back to the example I was using just a minute ago, you know, a channel for each tutorial group, that will be a perfectly good place to have a meeting, and you could schedule your meetings to happen in those channels. Your students would get notified, and then they go into that channel, they meet, all the content stays in there, and they can also have discussions and share files and those kinds of things. So I would say that's a really good way of doing it. You know, each group gets their own space, as well as a general space for you to put notices, files, and do the extra stuff that class teams do. Okay, so when you create a team, you get a general channel by default. All right, unless you're only going to have a general channel, which I guess is going to be unusual, I would make that general channel a one-way street for communication. You can make it so that students can't reply. This becomes your notice board. Okay, it also becomes your place to store files, class notebooks, assignments, grades, and also link to QM Plus if you want to, and I'll unpack those in a little while because there's some quite nice stuff in there. The general channel in a class team is really important. All right, it has some extra features that other teams don't have. Okay, but posts is the most important space because it's the place where you're going to get information to your students. Okay, and the way that I get that information to my students is using the @ symbol on my keyboard. Okay, so get good at notifying your students. So I can say @team, physics semester 1, astrophysics semester 1. Now, unless I do tag my team, which is what I've done here, I've typed @team and it's gone purple. Unless I tag them, I'm going to struggle to get information to my students because they're going to look at this and they're going to think, okay, there's not anything here for me because I haven't been notified of anything. Your students won't be hanging around here waiting for you to post stuff, I doubt. But what they will do is they'll have it on their phone. They'll have it ready. And you can exploit that by using tags. Basically, @ and team gets a message to the whole team that you've put something in there that's useful for them. Okay. That would notify your students, and you can see replies are disabled. All right, so they can't just reply to that. Get a red badge to say that I've mentioned or notified the whole team. But I can also do that on an individual basis. Maybe I've got a student who's not been here very much and there's something in here they're really going to be excited about. So if I just type that student's name, I use Aggie as the example here. Oops. I can delete her surname for a more informal experience. Here's something you'll be interested in. Oops, sorry. Anyway, and then that would notify Aggie directly. So @person, @team are the most important tools to get to grips with in Teams, because otherwise the information that you put here will just pass them by. All right, they won't come here. Basically, they won't come here. All right, they'll be waiting for the notification, which will pop up on their phone and on their computer if they have that enabled, which they do by default. So, you know, put a notice to every member in the team, that will pop up on their mobile phone as a notification, just like WhatsApp. So it's a really good tool to get information to your students, and you can be sure they will see that as long as they haven't turned off all their notifications. Okay, so @person, @team is the way to do that. Okay, really, really simple. Okay, if you're using channels to put information in, we can also use @channel. Oops. So if you wanted just to notify this channel, then that's how you would do that. So that's good for your breakout channels or your group channels. All right. Okay. So get good at notifying your students is the most important thing that you can be good at, really. Okay. If you want to schedule a meeting, do it here. Meet Now literally starts a meeting right this second and notifies any of your students who are logged in, or whether it's on their phone or their desktop, that you've started a meeting. Would they like to join? The other way to do it, and probably the most common way to do it, is to schedule a meeting. So maybe I don't want a meeting here, but I want to go into my channel, make a new channel. Tutorial group 1. There we go. It's my new channel. It has posts and files and notes, but I want to make a meeting in here. So I'll choose my meeting, schedule it. Normal Outlook sort of invitation. Tutorial 1. I don't need to invite people to this meeting because it's already here. We're going to meet in our tutorial group channel. That's it. It's going to be tomorrow, 11:30 till 12. There we go. Send the invitation. It posts to the team, so everybody gets to know, and it will also go into my students' calendars and all of those things so that they will know that it's a scheduled meeting. Okay, really good. And they will meet in this channel. Okay, all the content goes into the channel. If you share files, it goes into files. If you share anything else, it goes into posts. So it's all nice and well organized. Okay, easy. All right, so that's your posts area, really useful for getting information to your students. But I've also then created a discussion area where my students can discuss topics that I put in there, so that there is a place for them to be a bit social and discuss things, because we don't have those. You know, they can't wander out of the lecture theatre talking about the, you know, what you've talked about. So have a place for them to do that, whether that's in their tutorial group or somewhere else. Allow that to happen. All right. And if you come to the basic or the advanced or both, ideally, then you will get to see, you'll get to play with all of this stuff, and I'll set you some little tasks to do while you're here, as if you were my students. Okay, so across from there, if we go back to the general one, in the general channel, which remember is special to this type of team, if I go to files, each team shares a pool of 4 terabytes, which is absolutely massive. So you will probably never run out of space to store stuff in your teams. And the files area in the general tab has this special folder called class materials. The class materials folder is read only for the students. Okay, as a teacher, lecturer, I can put whatever I like in there. My students can read it, but they cannot do anything else with it effectively. Okay, they can read it, but they cannot do anything else. All right. Other than that, I can work live with my students here. So if I open a document, got my Word document here, it'll open in Word Online. And Word Online, A, has got a lot better, and B, is really good for certain tasks. One of those tasks is working on things live. So if you're working on things collaboratively and live with your students, then this is the place to do it. All right, because everything is instant. If you opened it in the desktop app using this button here, that's fine, but you'll experience a bit of a delay in the live editing. So you get the advanced tools that the desktop editor has, but you don't get the live editing. So it's kind of horses for courses. You need to choose your weapon effectively. If you're going to work live and you want those wonderful online tools, work here. Okay, if you don't, then happily use the desktop app and it will save it back to Teams anyway. Okay, but I can also add comments, open a conversation, and we'll play with all of this in the basic course. I can use Dictate. That's the third time that we'll see that other engine in use where it dictates what you say onto the page. Very shortly, I will also be able to upload an MP3 or an audio file into Word Online directly, and it will transcribe it from that audio file and attribute who says what to who. So it is an amazingly powerful tool. All right. There's also a Grammarly type editor there as well if you need that kind of thing. So again, don't dismiss the online editor. It has a place and it's useful for certain things, especially working collaboratively online. Okay, all stored automatically here. Again, you know, one of the other benefits of using this as a storage space is that you get version history. All right, so if I had, you know, working with students on this document and I wanted to see what they'd done last week, or someone had ruined it and accidentally deleted it, then I could go back into that document's history and restore from ages ago. All right, so it works really, really well. Every version of that document is kept and the versions are created automatically. All right, so there's no real risk or anything like that. You can always go right back to the beginning of a document if you need to. All right, so that's the files area. Each channel has a files area, but only the general channel has a class materials files area. All right, and if you want to make it look like this files area lives on your PC, your Mac, or your Linux box, press sync. Okay, that uses the OneDrive synchronization tool and makes it look as if these files live on your PC. They don't, they live here, but they look as if they live on your PC. Works beautifully on the Mac as well, and you can interact with them as if they're on your computer. So it's quite nice if you want to use the desktop versions by default, for example. All right, so that's the files area. Sorry, I always run out of time at this point. Class Notebook, we're not going to spend a lot of time on today, apart from just to give you a very brief overview of it. Class Notebook is very separate from the rest of Office 365. It's very similar to Word or Excel or one of those tools. It has a desktop app, which is great. It has an online app, which is less great in this case. But it works in a very different way to how lots of the other tools work. It's not like Word. It's non-linear. So you can have a canvas that expands as much as you need it to expand. All right. It has these sections and pages, which makes it very much like a Filofax or a LeverArch file. But it's more like a Filofax because it accepts any kind of content you can possibly think of, from photos to screen snips to recordings to audio files through to video, handwritten content. Again, stylus input is really important here. All of that stuff works beautifully in OneNote, and it doesn't have to go on a nice neat area in the page. It can go wherever you want it to go. All right, so incredibly powerful tool. All right, basically it does everything that you would have done on paper in your, you know, in your lecture theatre or whatever, you know, stuff that you gave out of the door on bits of paper, or, you know, the collaboration that you've asked your students to do together in groups on paper can be done in Class Notebook. All right, we have a collaboration space, which is where students can work together. Content library, which again is just for you as the teacher to edit and your students to view. An area for your planning and an area for each student. I've only got one student in this team at the moment. All right. I can distribute work. I can give them articles that I found off the internet and send things to them really, really easily. All right. The best experience is going to be got by opening it in the app, but saving it back to Teams. Okay, because again, Teams knows who my students are. That's the reason that we keep it here. Okay, assignments and grades. We're not going to look at those this morning, but they are there if you want to play with them. Officially, please don't use them for setting work. They're there if you want to play with them, but they are rather basic at the moment. I work with lots of primary and secondary schools across the country who use these and love them because they're so simple, but they are not yet ready to use, I don't think, for university level work. All right, so please have a look at them. If you've got feedback, give it to Microsoft. They are interested. Use the help button down the bottom to feedback your ideas. But at the moment, assessments should be done in the normal way. All right. So that's assignments and grades. They're a developing tool. Okay. The last one, and I've put this here myself, is a link to QM+. Now, this is a link obviously to your Moodle instance, which is QM+. I've just linked to the front page here, but you could link directly to your module page or to several pages if you wanted to. Okay. The moment, this is a really basic integration. It is just me displaying a website inside Teams, which works nicely. It looks like it's supposed to be here. It feels good, but it is just a website inside Teams. In the longer run, there is an integration between Moodle and Teams that will allow two-way communication between the two programs. We're not quite sure how that will work for QM yet. That is in testing again, along with the kind of automatic creation of teams and things like that. All right. So, you know, at the moment, if you want to integrate QM+, do it by just pressing the plus. Well, again, we'll look at this next time. Grabbing a website, pasting the web address, which is your QM+ address, in there and saving it. You then get a specific QM+ page wherever you want it. Okay. Right. And sorry, that's probably quite a lot of information to take in just an hour. We've got just 3 or 4 minutes if there are any questions, and I will just stop the recording at that point. Oh, I can see there's some hands up as well. Sorry, I can't see them while I'm presenting, but there we go. If I stop the recording,